Now that we looked at the global landscape, for the next three speakers, we'll look at what are some of the countries doing. So we would love for you to talk about what's happening in Thailand.
Thank you, Lakshmi. And thanks to the organizer for putting up a very interesting topics about the future of public health. But I just like to rephrase that a little bit by talking about the future of health systems and policy, because I believe that the conference would be focusing more on system and policy rather than just public health, which to me is connoting the fact that we are trying to solve one problem after the others. And I'll do that by reflecting on the Thai experiences in universal health coverage implementation over the last 15 years. Not going to detail how we did that because I'm sure the story have been told and listened to a lot, but I'll just share with you some of the key lessons so that we can look better into the future. In order to do that, I think I'll share with you three important lessons that we have learned about our UHC implementation that would help us to be better, look forward, and design for the future. The first point is that when we have UHC doesn't just happen and get implemented. UHC has benefited a lot from the so-called long decades of Thai health system evolution. I happen to be lucky enough to start my work there, when something has already happened, but many things have been happening, so I had the chance to witness and be a part of some of these changes. The focus on the change that I like to point out to you is the fact that we have focused a lot on how we design our healthcare systems so that it could be multi-level but integrated. This structurally how we have been trying to do, and at least in the public sector, which take care of the 75% of the population, has been trying to do. But even though we try to do that, we found that actually it's not something that happened right away. In other words, even though we wanted to have the so-called multi-tier with more people going to the lowest level, the places closest to their home, the situation doesn't seem to be so until we did something different in the late 70s, early 80s, when we created the so-called district health system that has helped to change the relationship between the people and the healthcare system, which has now led to a better distributed access to care. And you will notice that this thing happened before 2002, the year when we started UHC. But the other part about the historical evolution is the fact that UHC doesn't just happen overnight again. In terms of financial risk protection, we have benefited a lot from many others experiences before that, and that's where I started. And that's where many of the systems, started to be reformed, and we learned a lot through the so-called mistakes in certain systems that before we launched our UHC system in the year 2002. So that's the benefit of the so-called system evolution, which has been very dynamic. And the healthcare system and the health system leadership has been very resilient. But the second lessons that I like to share with you is the fact that, these are not the results of a single political leaders. Of course, political leaders are very important. Without them, I would say that the UHC in Thailand may not have seen the light of the day. But getting it implemented, making it sustainable, require many other leadership in many other groups of stakeholders in the Thai health system. And the third lesson is that now we are facing a lot of the questions about how we will be able to meet increasing demand, increasing healthcare spending, as Ashish has pointed out, and I'm sure that we are facing all over the world. The lesson is that rather than focusing on how to meet increasing demand by mobilizing more financial resources and putting the financial risk back again to the people, we might have to rethink and redesign the way we look at the problem that we are facing right now. In other words, the important lesson is that we need to rethink and redesign. And with that three sets of lessons, I believe that in order to move forward in so-called getting our health systems and health policy environment right, we need to do three things. But before I share with you the three things, I think that it might be important to ask why we have to do the three things that I'm going to ask you. to me, the problem, the approach to the future health system is not to try to solve the present problem or even the future problem about elderly aging society. It's opportunity to rethink and redesign because of the increasing opportunities offered by new technologies, and also what I see as the so-called new concepts about health and well-being, about happiness, as versus healthcare and treating ill health. So with that, I think that we need to do three things. The first thing is that our health system has to make sure that it has a mechanism and a capability to rethink and redesign. In other words, we have to keep on asking ourselves whether we have the kind of system that we like. I'll share with you one of the examples that we had in Thailand when we tried to do family care team as a way to change a relationship, because it is a relationship that matters. It's not what kind of services that you provide, but how you do that. And we all know that when you talk about primary health care, one of the things that has been very much lacking is the trust in the system. People would like to go to the places closest to their home, but they just don't trust them. So you need to rearrange the relationship within the healthcare system. In Thailand, we propose the ideas of, we have been doing what we call family care team by focusing on family with certain number of people to be covered. But the more important thing is that we reorganize the system so that people at the multi-level work more integratedly. In other words, it's not just the classical referral system. And we believe that the so-called new kind of relationship that is expected between the providers and the people, the community, and multi-levels of the tertiary, secondary, and primary care would be further facilitated by the new technologies, digital technologies and communication technologies. But not only that, we have been doing some kind of a so-called policy design lab, and these are the results of some of the so-called design lab, where we identify people health data center as one of the very important missing part of the health system that will help to make sure that the healthcare would be better democratized, the people would be the one who own the decision making and started the good conversation with healthcare providers. Having said that, the second part that I think we need to do in looking at the future health system is to make sure that all sectors are also concerned about health. In other words, we have to put health into all policies, as George has elaborated this morning. If we have a prime minister like George, maybe we don't have to talk too much, but to us, it's not the case. So that what I see is that the Ministry of Health has to play a different role. The Ministry of Health has to be the advocate for health with all the macro policy players and be the influencers. It might appear to be that the health minister would be the most nuisance minister in the whole cabinet, because you'll be talking about well-being when other people are talking about money. And we have so many examples where money and well-being has been a conflict. I don't have to elaborate on that, but that's the point. But it is important to keep in mind that by bringing health into all policy, we are not only reducing health risk, but we are also optimizing spending for ill health. But at the same time, we are also reducing conflict and confrontation, not to mention economic productivity. And my third point is that we need new kind of leadership, what I call the PL power to relationship, which is participatory leadership with participatory learning. And this is what I propose as the so-called participatory interactive learning through action, because that is very important. Learning is not only about evidence-based decision making. It's about making mistakes. It's about learning from mistakes, because we can't have the perfect solution, whatever we wish to be. But the important thing is that that is not happening only from the top. We need leadership from various actors, stakeholders within the system. And as I told you, in the USC, it has been very clear that if we don't have leadership in other parts of the system will be very, very rigid and will not be able to transform and evolve, especially when you are facing with different demands and different goals and things like that. So leadership has to be able to create common goal. But various other sectors, leaders in other sectors, stakeholders, also would be ready to learn. We need to learn how to work with the people we don't like, listening to them, make mistakes together rather than keep on criticizing. Unfortunately, the conventional politics has always been like that. You expect politicians to do everything. If they don't do it, you blame them. So that would be one way to do that if they are really bad people. But you might also like to be reminded that the future has to be created jointly. So I hope that in the third point about the participatory leadership with participatory interactive learning through action would be one of the things that would help us achieve what I call positively disruptive leadership, which can learn, rather than negatively fragmented leadership that are very self-centered and are very hazardous and would lead to a very wasteful and productive health system in the future. Thank you very much.